All right, go ahead, Lewis.
This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Advisory Review Panel, convened to review applications submitted for the Regional Initiative grants for fiscal year 2021. Actually, I think that's for fiscal year 2022.
Yes, thank you.
That's okay. I am Louis Rickey, Executive Director of the Indiana Arts Commission. Today is April 27th, 2021, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening in today and would like to remind everyone that there is to be no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of the applications before, during, or after the panel meeting between panelists and applicants. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. I'll call you out by name, starting with Merlin Bell.
Hello, my name is Merlin Bell. I am the manager of Applied Theater at Prairie, and I am located in Indianapolis.
And Haley Breyer.
Hello, I am Haley Breyer. I am the Strategic Engagement Coordinator at Indiana Youth Institute, and I am from Indianapolis.
Stephanie Cochran. Stephanie, you're muted.
I'm currently employed at Ivy Tech as an adjunct professor. I'm also a public art sculptor in the Anderson area.
Michael Dane.
Hello, my name is Michael Dane. I'm a recently retired theater professor from Ball State University, and I'm located in Muncie, Indiana.
Renee Stout.
I'm Renee Stout, and I manage grants at Sequoia Aging and In-Home Solutions, and I am in Indianapolis.
And Ann Amrhein.
Hi, I'm Ann Amrhein. I'm a retired teacher from Batesville Community School Corporation in Batesville. I spent my career as a classroom teacher and a school librarian at the elementary level. I spent all 36 years, though, working with arts and education programs in our schools and in our community.
And then on our IAC staff, Stephanie Haynes.
Hi, Stephanie Haynes, Arts Education and Accessibility Program Manager and the Grants Manager for Region 7.
And Deanna Poelsma.
Hi, I'm Deanna Poelsma, the Grants Research and IT Manager with the Indiana Arts Commission.
And finally, Benjamin Thomas.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Thomas. I'm the Indiana Arts Commission intern and the technical support for this panel.
Now we'll begin the review, the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the application does not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new additional or opposing comments. We're not looking for a consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open the discussion to the full panel to offer their perspectives. Remember, in interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will begin placing the panelist's video and audio on hold during the application's evaluation. However, no conflicts of interest exist on this panel today. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we will ask the panel to update their scores in our online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. Are there any questions? So let's begin. Now we will review application Number 1, Gal's Guide to the Galaxy. Our first reader is Merlin Bell. Merlin.
Thank you so much, Louis. Yes, the Gal's Guide to Galaxy Women's History, Library, and Research Center. When I looked at that application, I thought that they did very well in articulating the need base as well as the community that they're surrounded by. I also thought the artists that they had working on this project clearly aligned with what the film club will need, as well as I thought they did well in showing the media on their YouTube and different other social media sites. For as community engagement, I thought they did very well in kind of articulating how many people that they served, as well as what type of films that they will be choosing based on what they wrote in their application on who they serve and who they're trying to empower with this project that they're doing. And that's all I had.
Our second reader for this application is Haley Brayer. Haley.
So Merlin did a great job of providing a great overview. Initially, I know he mentioned that they showed or wrote that who would be at these events, and they weren't really clear or really didn't provide a lot of detail. So I would have liked to have seen at least some examples of who they would invite. I know they mentioned Jean Stratton Porter's work, Women in Prison series, but I wish they could have expanded a little bit on that. I thought it was a great idea, especially since this is a library that the only women's library in Indiana or the country. I thought their artistic examples were great. I like how they have monthly activities and themes that go with them. I wish they would have expanded a little bit on the community engagement and idea. It seems like they touched on it, but didn't really provide a lot of clarity or further explanation. So that's some comments there. Also with the timeline, they didn't provide a clear timeline. And so I wasn't really sure how the event was actually going to play out. And then on the budget, they did not provide an itemized income and expenses in the requested format. And so that's what I have.
I will open it up for any additional or new comments from the remainder of the panel. Well, hearing none, I will ask you to update your comments and scores in the system. And if you will, under reactions, give me a thumbs up when you have accomplished that. I will know we're set to move on. All right, thank you very much. The next application is the Greater Greenwood Arts Council, and Michael Dane is the first reader.
I thought that the Art on the Trail project had a clear purpose. They clearly shared their track record of successful implementation for previous 2-year cycles, and that it did seem to provide sufficient information that would lead me to conclude that audiences would continue to have the opportunity for a new, meaningful aesthetic experience. Several Indiana artists will benefit financially, at least the ones who are doing the installation. And if they choose people from the state as the actual sculptors, then additional artists from the state as well. Thought the project was being developed with somewhat limited community input on the actual sculpture selections, but there are public forums and online opportunities for the public to voice their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the current project. And they did stipulate that that feedback would be used for future plans. The artworks are to be placed among an ADA approved trail that's accessible to all viewing audiences, which removes both geographic and economic barriers. One of the selection criteria is also relevance, which hopefully would encourage sculpture choices that speak to today's world, including underserved populations and diverse voices. The program, based on the past incarnations of the program, seems to have excellent leadership. The budget, as a result, was based on best practices and seems sound and reasonable as well. That's all I had.
Louis, you were muted.
Thank you, Michael. And now Anna's second reader.
Thank you. Michael hit on almost all of my notes. The only thing I think I would add that I don't know that he said exactly, is how helpful I found the videos and the social media sites. They were very, a picture was worth 1,000 words, especially with sculpture. That really was helpful and appreciated. So, but that's really all I have extra. Thanks.
I'll open it up for comments from the rest of the panel. Hearing none, I will ask you to update your comments and scores and give me the thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. Unless I missed it, I think I'm still waiting for Michael. Maybe I missed it. All right.
I clicked mine, it didn't register, sorry.
I love how some of you are live thumb uppers and other are virtual thumb uppers. I'm in the live camp myself. So anyhow, we will go on to application number 3, Guilford Township. Stephanie is the first reader.
Hi. Thank you for this submission. It was interesting to read. I appreciate the effort put into making this happen. For artistic quality, this theatrical event looks like it meets the criteria for the ACA grant category. This event is open to the public and free of charge. It's a new event, therefore there are some unknown elements as to how the community will respond, but I believe they are taking that into consideration and looking to the future as far as how this is going to proceed into future planning. As far as community engagement, it's well invested in the engagement and development of other arts experiences for the community that they serve, and they're actively growing cultural and arts experience in their area. The large crowd estimates with youth reach far into that community and help validate their request. The project management meets the ICA standards for qualification. The marketing, there's a wide reach into marketing, and maybe it would be good for clear evaluation points. At this point, it doesn't use Indiana artists, and possibly in the future, this could be part of the agenda and planning. I understand that maybe using something this concise and easy to engage with is probably part of the reason they made the decision they did, but I would like to see Hoosiers used for this in the future.
Great. I will go to Merlin, who is the second reader.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephanie, for those comments. I definitely had a different point of view. I did agree that I was a little bit concerned with the lack of Hoosier artists who will be working on this project. But for as artistic quality, I thought that Guilford Township articulated why they will like to host the Brown Box Theater with William Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing. I just didn't understand when reviewing the artistic quality portion, how it would impact the community at large. I also didn't understand when reviewing this section, if they were going to be, yet again, using local artists or just solely the Brown Box Theater from, as they were saying, from Maryland, traveling to Indiana. Going into the community engagement section, my note for them was, yet again, I think Guilford really articulated the cast and the crew will be diverse and meet certain IDEA. With looking at their social media on this application and posters, I didn't get a sense that it was inclusive or how this partnership will ultimately uplift the community. Other than that, I didn't have any further notes.
I'll open it up to the panel at large.
I went to the website of the theater company that's coming in, and because I wanted to see that in their materials that there was a diverse population coming in, so that at least audiences coming to the performances would have an opportunity to see people that look like all of them performing. And it did look to be that in their past productions, there wasn't anything there for Much Ado About Nothing, that there were photos of about half of the company being actors of color, which I thought that was promising. I would agree with Merlin that I didn't see anything in the marketing for this show that necessarily communicated that same quality. I did have a little bit of a concern in terms of the timeline being a little rushed in order to get the number of people out that they were trying to get out. And I just had a question, which the answer may certainly be yes. Since theater is a little bit different than the music performances that they've done in the past, if there is somebody that will be involved in the local efforts who has a theater background, that should something go askew, I know the company comes in fully prepared to mount their show and to put their show on, and they did a good job explaining that. I wondered if there was somebody locally who would be there to handle anything on the ground with theater knowledge, should there be some cause for that to happen. I'm not sure that's part of our charge, but it was a question that I had when I was reading this particular proposal. That's all I had.
Anne.
I had just a couple of comments. I felt it was probably a cost-effective, practical way to try something out in the community, something like this out in the community, because it doesn't have a lot of investment in materials and sets and those kinds of things. If if it doesn't go well. The other thing I would say is, even though it's not a Indiana company, which it's not, it's Maryland, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have Indiana artists as part of it. We don't know who those artists are. And just my experience in arts programs, when Playhouse in the Park from Cincinnati came in, when different groups came in, the actors were actually from all over the place. So we can't make that assumption that it's not benefiting Indiana artists, because we really don't know at this point, I don't think, where the artists are from. So, but it's not an Indiana company. I will agree with that. But anyway, that's all I think.
Anyone else?
I guess I would say,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I guess I would say in relation to Anne's comment, if there are Indiana artists involved, it would have been nice to know so that we could have that clarification, since it is explicit to the criteria, or it is a question that they do ask. So that would have strengthened their narrative. And then I also had one additional point of, they made a lot of comments in the application that would have been strengthened if they would have provided some data, especially in relation to the community engagement and IDEA about, the communities that do come to these events and that are represented.
Any additional comments? I would ask you then to go ahead and.
I'm sorry. The last comment that I made was, I think it's fantastic that I think collaboration in general is a fantastic thing for any small, medium, or large organization, especially right now. I guess the only reason why I critique them about having a outside partnership was only because since most states are getting hit, most artistic institutions are getting hit hard on a local level, it just would have been nice to see some type of collaboration among other artistic institutions locally, instead of importing outside. Only because in my mind, if you do it locally, you kind of keep a strong front with all other institutions. But that was the only final note that I had.
Are there any other comments? If not, I'll ask you to update your scores and comments and give me the thumbs up when you're ready to go. Very good. We will move on to application number 4, Hoosier Outreach Incorporated. And Renee, you are our first reader.
Okay. This was the Storage Space Art Gallery and their artist tool library. I thought their purpose was very clear. I thought it was a unique and creative idea to set up a tool lending library. I thought a strength was inclusion of how-to programming for the general public. And one thing I wish they had included was more details about the actual tools and equipment they're planning to lend. I don't know if those, if that means big things or small things. The artists to benefit were primarily art students from high schools, which I thought was a good opportunity for them. Under community engagement and IDEA, I thought a strength was involving the neighborhood associations surrounding their area. One thing they mentioned was surveying the community, but they did not detail who that community is. So I would have liked to have known that. And unfortunately, they did not respond to the question about IDEA strategies. So I can't speak to that. Under project management, their staff and timeline information seemed very appropriate. Again, I would have been interested to know how their program will work. More details about how they will lend items, how they will get them back, just the management of that plan. And that's all I have.
Our second reader for that is Michael.
I also found this project to be really intriguing. The way that I read it was in addition to the high school arts students or college arts graduates who don't have the socioeconomic means to buy tools, that it would serve anybody suffering from some sort of socioeconomic challenges, any artists, and that they would be renting tools. I certainly agree with Renee's comments about, I wish I knew a little bit more about what the tools were, because at least the initial part of their budget was only $2,000 for the tools, plus I believe it might have been $4,000 or $5,000. I'm sorry if I'm not completely accurate there in terms of in-kind donations of tools. And I know even if they're just buying a kiln, they're already talking about $1,500 to $2,000 for a medium-sized kiln. So I did have some questions about that as well. I did like the thought that they were going to use postcard surveys and try to do a write-up in the Urban Times newspaper to promote more inclusion. I did have a question though, why they were waiting with surveying their audience until after they opened. There wasn't going to be any surveying until after opening day. I think they were going to begin those in April and May, rather than talking to individual artists ahead of time to figure out specifically what their needs were. And maybe that conversation is happening, but I didn't see that in the actual application. And then again, I'm not entirely sure this is part of our charge. I did have questions about whether or not the facility rental costs and whether the monies for tool repair and for purchasing new tools would be possible still after the grant ran out. But I was very intrigued by how they were using grant money in order to pay people to even build the shelves and the physical infrastructure of the facility that they were doing, and how they had divided it up in such a way that there were going to be a number of Indiana artists that were going to benefit from that. So a lot of intriguing things in the grant, just left me with a few questions.
So additional comments from the panel? Hearing none, I'll ask you to update your scores and comments and give me the thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Merlin, I may have missed your thumb. I don't know. Thank you. We're going to move on to applicant number 5, the Indiana Fashion Foundation Corporation, and Haley is our first reader.
So it's the Indiana Fashion Foundation Corporation for Making It in Fashion Industry Conference. As far as the artistic quality and artist benefit, I can see this as a strong overall project from the inception of the idea to testing and then implementation, especially within a pandemic. By the description, the audience is clearly defined. I also appreciated their transparency in finding a solution to what they mentioned as an overall industry infrastructure problem. I felt that the narrative was not as clear on the artists involved in the project, as well as how they will financially benefit. I assumed that the speaker's artists would receive a stipend. I feel like the narrative could have been stronger, though, if they identified some of the professionals and at least the organizations that they are affiliated with, as well as some of the students that would be attending. And then they did mention some names in their artistic examples, which were strong. There could have been more visuals and how they will establish the infrastructure for attendees. It seemed that the examples provided content that would be available, but it seemed visually it was lacking on providing an overall feel of what the conference would offer. And as far as community engagement and IDEA, I mean, unfortunately, the narrative did not speak much to IDEA. So it was hard to get a good idea of how that's going to be represented for the overall project. And then I thought that they listed a lot of impressive tools and methods, though, to measure impact. And then for project management, the staffing overview, it appears that the appropriate individuals will be in charge of running the project, and they provided an astounding timeline. So it seemed like it would be a well-executed project. I felt the budget seemed a little heavy on admin costs, but that just might be internal. And then there was some cash income and cash expenses that didn't align, as well as when they listed in kind. And that's it.
And Stephanie, you are the second reader. You are muted as well, Stephanie.
I'm sorry. I'm in agreement with Haley and her observations. She voiced some concerns that also kind of brought my attention to them as well. I think there's a clear summary. It's well-stated intentions. They do have a 2-year history as Indiana designers. As far as community engagement, I didn't notice that it was really available to the general public and had a smaller audience outreach. It also seems that there are 2 programs being discussed. One, the summer youth camp, and then an internship program. So there was a little bit of confusion as I was reading it as to what was what. The budget seems reasonable, but I'm unclear as how the funds support the projects versus the organization. Probably the high admin cost is what drew my attention. But overall, I think that the idea of investing in the fashion industry in Indiana is a good point and a good premise and due for local growth.
I'll open it up to the panel at large now. Hearing no comments, update and give me a thumbs up when you're ready. All right, we will move on to Applicant number 6, the Indiana Federation of Music Clubs Incorporated, and you are our first reader.
All right, thank you. The Indiana Federation of Music Clubs are hosting the national convention at their 2022 conference, and the grant is for hiring local musicians and artists to perform during that conference. So so it definitely meets the criteria for the artist benefit, and that they're all from Indiana, which is really helpful. I would say the project description would benefit a little bit from more information regarding the education piece. They talk about encouraging music education. What does that look like? What does that sound like? They did list some of the groups, the musicians that they've already secured, and that was helpful. Community engagement and idea. I felt this area was not as well defined as other parts of the evaluation. Even though it seems like a worthwhile project, for purposes of this grant, it's really important to address each of the criteria in order to, to do well with the grant itself to earn the funding. And how, for example, how will you reach a wide variety of possible participants? What strategies are in place to address accessibility and other aspects of IDEA? The sample marketing material and the internet sites, they were very helpful in getting an idea of what the conference entails, but they did not reflect much diversity. And diversity was stated, it was stated that to share the diversity, they had a wide variety of ages, ethnicity, location, but it was hard to see that, and specific examples were not given in the application itself. Now, I understand that due to the reliance on the local Indiana group that you have on the national group, and the fact that the conference is 1.5 years away, I can see that some of the specifics are more difficult to know at the time of this grant application. However, I do feel that there could have been additional details about the local hosts and the timeline that would have made this a stronger proposal. It would seem that notes from past conferences could have given some guidance in this area. As far as the timeline seemed fine, and the project management was explained well. The budget itself was not entered correctly. It was stated earlier in the application that the budget is reliant on conference registration fees, which I believe could have been used for an income, correct? But also the expenses do not match the request. It said that they had $2,700 in need, but they had a $3,000 request. So in the cash income, you would count your total request. I mean, is what you would put in there. I think that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
And Renee, you're the second reader.
I had just 2 notes to add. I think it is a worthwhile project. And as they're making it open to the public, I did not see a clear plan of how they would make people outside of their clubs aware of the opportunities for concerts. So I would hope that they could do that, because it's a good variety of performances that are planned. Later on, they mentioned surveying their members after the fact, but I would have liked to see a way that they could get evaluations from the general public, again, people outside of their club network who might attend. That's all I would add.
I open it up to the rest of the panel for comment.
I just thought overall, like the idea of having members. So like this is like a membership organization. And so I struggled with, and it just maybe would have been maybe why they struggled in the community engagement and IDEA it would have been helpful to know like how this would help their members as well as the greater community surrounding where they're going to hold the conference. I don't know. There was just like a lack of disconnect for me with this one.
Any other comments by the panel? Hearing none, I'll ask you to update and give me your thumbs up. Great. We will go on to application number 7, the Indiana State Museum Foundation Incorporated. Merlin, you are our first reader.
Thank you. Yes, I thought this proposal overall was written well. I did have some hesitations when it came to the artists that will be financially benefited for this work. I know they had a couple artists already listed on here, but I was a little bit confused. It was one of it said Southern Indiana, but for the most part, it was like based in Kentucky or Cincinnati. So I wasn't really sure if the artists were actually rooted in Indy or Indiana in general. Far as the community engagement, I had a suggestion moving forward, which was kind of diversifying the advertisements and social media pages. This way it would show that there's a presence in different communities. I know that they sort of stressed bringing community together, but I didn't quite see that in their postings or social media posts that they provided for this proposal. And that's pretty much it. I did think they did a good job though with their timeline. I thought that was pretty detailed. And everything else seems pretty clear cut.
Stephanie, you are our second reader. And you are muted still. You're still muted.
There we go,
Stephanie.
third time. Sorry. Okay, artistic quality. The event meets the ICA standards. It uses several music groups. Again, they're not necessarily Indiana artists per se. Community outreach. It looks like it will have a wide impact on the community there. Seems like there's a good media present. Project management looks like it meets the standards and quality expected by the ICA or IAC, and the budget seems reasonable. I again would look for more clarification as far as who the artists are that it will impact, although it looks like that is kind of a regional area, and inclusion in that region makes sense to me in some ways as far as the location of the event. That's it.
I'll open it up to the rest of the panel.
I did think it was an interesting argument is too strong of a word. Their use of the community itself as being an underserved community because it's a challenge for them to get to hear music groups that are as talented as the ones they're bringing in where they live without having to travel a great distance. I also was happy to see in the proposal that the third concerts, whoever performs at the third concert won't be chosen until they've been able to survey people at the first two concerts in order to determine, a good fit for what they're looking for the third concert. So I'm holding out hope that the crowd will say it should be an Indiana artist and maybe an artist that reflects other underserved communities. So there's a positive there potentially as well.
I will open it up to any other comments.
I would also add to, because there was a lot on geography with this application because it's in a specific region, specific area in Indiana. And I would just reiterate that writing to your reader that they don't live in Indiana. So just being very clear when you talk about Madison, Indiana, or any relation to like numbers within that region, just being clear about your region and why this project is so important for that region.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll ask you to update and give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
We are about halfway through. I'm going to ask you guys if you need a break. Does anyone need a quick, we can take a 2-minute bathroom break or anything? Do you need that, or do you want to keep going on in the process? All right, looks like nobody's begging for a break, so we will continue on.
Anne, I don't know if I got a thumb from you.
Sorry, I'm just, oh, for the grant? Oh, yes, I did. Right away.
Oh.
I'm all set, sorry.
I must have missed
I
it.
thought you meant the break. So no, I think it already took it out.
All right, we're
But
going to go.
I'm good all the way around.
Very good. We'll go to Indianapolis Classical Schools, number 8 application. Haley, you are our first reader.
So we have Indianapolis Classical Schools, the Indianapolis Classical Schools Spring Musical. In relation to the artistic quality and artist benefit, I think they provided a great explanation on surveying for past years. The narrative was strengthened by using the use of names to add additional clarity and relevance to the proposed project. I think it would have been helpful if the applicant would have explained what the Indianapolis Classical School is and some background context here. Because again, if you don't live in this area, you wouldn't exactly know what that is, and that it is made up of 2 different schools. They mentioned that the production that was postponed was Little Shop of Horrors, so it just would have been interesting to know and clarity there that if that was the show that they were proposing here as well. And then it was a confusing mention that the director designer stipends seemed dependent on this funding. And so I just would have been a little bit more clear there that they would be paid regardless. They did include some data, which was great to support the overall benefits of students' participation in arts education. I also thought that from some of the marketing materials that the space that they were working with seemed relatively small. So I was impressed to see that they were putting on some great productions within the small space that they had to work with. In relation to community engagement and IDEA, again, great inclusion of data to support the surrounding neighborhoods and the benefits of the classical schools. It is evident that their audience is clearly defined. Also, but providing some data sources would have been, should have strengthened the use of data here. I also felt that it was unclear, or that it was clear that underserved communities will benefit. And then again, like that the classical schools are made up of 2 multiple schools. So that continued to add confusion for me. It was great to see that students are actively involved in choosing, planning, and participating in the proposed project. And then they did not provide answers for the latter part of the IDEA section. So it was unfortunate that we couldn't hear more about that here. And then as far as project management, I thought that the staffing overview was appropriate, and then they had a thorough timeline, and then the budget was consistent with the narrative. That's all I have.
Michael, you're our second reader for this.
I agreed that the project had a clear academic, social, emotional learning, and community building purpose built into it. And they did use previous experiences to inform this year's project. I went back through and read the proposal again this morning and realized that I initially thought that they would be doing Little Shop this year also. They might not. They start the whole planning process over again, and the theater club will determine, or they'll at least propose a list of plays that they'll choose from again. If they did do Little Shop, as someone who's done the show before, there is that built-in expense of buying 4 incarnations, either renting or constructing your own in terms of the materials of building an Audrey 2 Venus flytrap. And I think that pushes their budget a little bit out of whack. It would have been tough to do all of that for $2,000. Although, as Haley has commented, the space that they're performing in is a smaller space. It has some limits. So perhaps they would figure out some ways to come up with creative mechanisms to, keep the costs down for that as well. I did appreciate the fact that they were giving discounted tickets prices to the community, which has some socioeconomic challenges. And that would help remove at least, or reduce at least, part of whatever economic challenges there were, in order to make sure that the local neighborhood felt like it was empowered by the production as well. And that's all I had, other than what Haley already said.
I will open it up for comments by the rest of the panel. Hearing none, please update and let me know when you're ready to go. Well, there you go. That was, you guys are getting more efficient here as you go along. Well, we will then go to number 9, the Indianapolis Zoological Society Incorporated. And Stephanie, you are our first reader.
There we go. It was an interesting proposal. It looks like they have a 2-year history of this expanding program. They stated that they'll be using 125 artists, so that's a good number. Wasn't really clear to me whether they were local or not, and there was some lack of specificity about what those who those people would be, as far as my interpretation of the grant writing. Zoological Society looks like they have a general inclusion policy, but not necessarily specific to this event. It was unclear if this event was free to the public with a purchased admission ticket, or if it was free to the public. Meets the standards set by the ICA, as well as evaluation of the event. They do a good job with marketing and evaluating the success of their programming and planning. The project participant numbers seemed low for the event. Let's see. Project management, they have good explanations and representation of quality project management. And the budget, it looked good, except that I had some confusion about whether or not the admission was actually free to the public, or it was just free with the ticket admission. That's it.
Renee, you are our second reader.
I would clarify that I read it as it was free with your paid admission. One point that I had a compliment as from the writing perspective is the language in their narrative was so descriptive and inviting and appealing to the senses. I just thought it was beautiful writing. I also like the fact that there were a large number of artists to benefit. And I agreed with Stephanie that I would have liked to know an estimate of the number of visitors for that event. That's all I had to add.
I will open it up for additional panel comments.
I did read that the event was free, that it wasn't free with admission. It was a free event. And that they were trying to remove economic barriers by doing that. And I was also very impressed by their entire inclusion strategy and their new diversity strategies as well. It feels like the zoo is really moving in a direction in which they wish to be welcoming to all. I looked at their marketing materials in order to see if the marketing materials sort of reflected that as well. And as might be expected, almost all their marketing materials feature only a diversity of animals instead of people at all. But they were also incredibly professionally done. And as the comment that I think Renee already made, it was an uplifting application. I read the application and I felt like I wanted to go to a zoo, and preferably one that had lots of artists that were performing at it. I think if you were a local resident, which I'm not, I'm in Muncie also, I would have recognized more of the artists that were being talked about. And the fact that at least some of the dance companies they were talking about, I did recognize as being local dance companies that reflect diversity. Again, that could have been more highlighted. And perhaps when they were writing the application, they weren't as aware as either they should have been that we are coming from all parts of the state in order to read their materials. But that's all I have to say.
And I will open it up for additional comments. Anne, you are muted.
I'm sorry. I would just like to add that it was the only application I read that had the employees and the volunteers were trained in idea strategies, and they had training on it. And I thought that was that really stuck out to me, and I offer kudos to the zoo for that it wasn't just the people coming in, it was the people that are hosting everyone. I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you. I will add that we don't compare the applications to one and another, but I think what I heard you say was that they met that criteria for idea strategies. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I would just make one comment, like a couple comments, I guess. That it's interesting to hear that everyone, or some of you, read that it was free event, which I did not get that vibe, especially since they mentioned the Go memberships, which are the greater opportunity. So that just confused it even more for me, because it seemed like, I can't remember who it was, I apologize, but they mentioned that it was an event with admission. And so I assumed that that was the case as well here. And then, but because they talked about the Go memberships, but then they weren't very clear on it. So it just added a layer of confusion for me in relation to that. But like one comment in the budget, it was nice to see that they had visitor research built in, which is not always something that's built in, which is great to see. So.
Any other comments on this application? Seeing none, I will ask you to update and let me know when you're ready. Very good. We will now look at application number 10, which is the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library Foundation Incorporated. And Michael, your first reader.
Okay. The Center for Black Literature and Culture at the Indianapolis Public Library seeks to nurture and develop Black poets in Indiana through a series of poetry workshops. And I thought the grant application clearly explained how the proposed project would provide participants from underserved communities with a powerful opportunity to share their voices and stories through poetry under the mentorship of a highly acclaimed professional poet and the assistance of two other poets with impressive backgrounds. The participants' experience, which would be having their poetry based by prompts critiqued by those professionals and including a final public reading, seems like it would be meaningful, impactful, and authentic. I thought the development of the project was largely created by the CBLC leadership and staff for the underserved community, not necessarily with that community. However, they have built in fairly substantial feedback opportunities generated by the participants during the actual workshops and following the completion of the workshops, and then that would be used for future planning efforts. The project, by its nature and structure, seeks to address barriers and increase access to underserved voices, and it makes the argument that it has the potential to make a huge impact on aspiring Black poets long after the workshop process is actually completed. The staff feels like it's a really impressive staff, and the planning process and the timeline seemed appropriate for a successful project to me. That's all.
Kelly, you are second reader.
So Michael did a great job as an overview here. Just in like relation to community engagement and inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, I felt they did a great job. But I wish, I don't know, I feel like there could have been a little bit more. I don't know, I wanted to know like how the workshops, because it says like how will the workshops occur for those that reside outside Indianapolis. It is not clear if the program is only for Black and Afro Latinx. As the narrative mentioned, the project will serve members of the community, but not that it is exclusive to only those individuals. I wanted a little bit more clarity, I guess, like the geography. Like I know that the Indianapolis Public Library is in Marion County, it's in downtown Indianapolis, and then they're hosting 4 workshops. So I wanted to know if a workshop was going to be hosted in a different area, different region. That would have just added some strength here and some clarity. Yeah, and so it was just, I know, like back to the workshops and like relation to the project budget. It just seemed like there was a large cost that they were putting toward each workshop. And so I, after reading the application, was left with what is going to happen at the workshop overall. You know, they're going to invite, you know, these communities, but also, you know, they're going to write poetry, but, you know, it seems like it's going to be an all-day event, or if it's just an hour, or I don't know, I just guess there could have been additional clarity there for me, but overall, I mean, it seems like a great project, just could have used a little bit more clarity.
I'm going to open it up for the rest of the panel, or Michael, if you're the first reader, if you want to add something before we go.
As I read it, Haley, I saw that the entire grant was really going to pay for the Black Poet Laureate, the current Black Poet Laureate, January, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, January York, and that was the cost of her presence in the workshops. I would certainly agree with you that more specifics other than saying there will be poetry prompts that are given to the participants and then their works will be critiqued. It would have been nice to have had some additional information in terms of what the structure of the actual workshops would have been.
I will open it up for the rest of the panel.
I was curious at the numbers that they were stating this would affect, and as an educator and spouse who is also an educator, was thinking that, I don't know if this was within our scope of conversation, that as the library facility, they might be able to use this as and archive some of these workshops for possible future educational uses within the public school systems, and would expose a lot more individuals, especially through maybe English programs and that kind of thing, to the poet laureate, because that seems like a small community that this will affect that might have approached the whole diversity and community engagement points.
Any other comments, Anne?
I felt their examples of the video that they provided were really powerful. Poetry is one of those things that the speaking of it is as important as the reading of it. And so I thought they had a nice balance of things that you could read, but you could also hear. I cried my way all the way through the Kick of Lambs. So it was really, you could see why they chose her, Ms. York, as the person who would run those. So that was well done on the grant.
Other comments? Hearing none, I will ask you to update and let me know when you're done. Very good. We will now go to number 11, the International Talent Academy. Renee, you are our first reader.
Okay. This is for their Carmel Arts Rising Star competition. I thought one of the strengths of the first part was the amount of collaboration that they have planned between professional artists and students, and also plans for workshops. My concern, I think there's potential for meaningful experience for the performers, but I think the audience side would mostly be parents and relatives of performers. I don't see it as an event that the general public would be interested in. I could be wrong, but they're talking about featuring beginner and intermediate levels and delivering, giving some stage time to performers who have not had the opportunity to become masters. So I would question how they would attract other people to this. It was also unclear about who the artists benefiting were. In the community engagement and idea, I thought it was a good plan that they were going to be offering some fee waivers and scholarships for students who might not have other means to pay for lessons and things. And a really strong collaboration with the City of Carmel, Piano Solutions, Mona Community Center, and other organizations. That whole section was very well thought out and detailed. Under project management, I did feel like they have a qualified staff, a very detailed timeline. The budget was reasonable, but they did have a math error there. But overall, I thought it was a good proposal. And that's all.
Merlin, you are second reader on this.
Thank you. And I agree with mostly everything that Renee said. One suggestion under community engagement and idea is when they were stating about helping young performers lack the need and financial resources, does that mean youth in the community or youth in collaboration with Marion County, or so I was a little bit confused with which youth that they wanted to kind of designate that to. And yeah, I agree with Renee when it comes to who will be the audience, because it wasn't stated that, you know, this was going to be like performances with the adult artists where there'll be a larger pool of audience being able to see adult artists performing, as well as young artists in their different tiers performing as well. So will it mostly be just a village of families watching their young people perform? So I was just a little bit confused with that as well. But other than that, I didn't have any further comments.
I will open it up. Michael, you have your hand up.
Yeah. The part of the application that I wish had been fleshed out a little bit more for me has to do with the new theater categories. For example, there's an incredibly impressive list of judges who have judged the music events in the past. And there is one former judge who has a little bit of a theater background. She's a voice and diction teacher, but more connected with opera than with theater. So there wasn't very much or anything really other than just stating what the theater competition categories would be. There wasn't any additional detail, and then there really wasn't anything specific about who the theater judge would be, whether it would be this other person that had a tangential connection or somebody with the amazingly impressive credentials that their music judges have had in the past. And that would have been something that if they had added it, it would have even made the application a little better application for me.
Any other comments?
There was a lack of clarity for me in relation to like the social media and marketing, because the flyer indicated it was going to take place next year, May 2022. The event was being postponed. However, if you go to their website, like they're taking applications now for the event this year. So I don't know if there was a change there or it just seemed contradictory, and that the project would then be recurring and not a new project if that takes place this year. So I was just unsure how this funding was going to be used. I don't know. There was a little bit of confusion there for me.
Michael?
Haley, there's 2 years of projects. This year still won't have the theater competition. It'll just be the music competition that they've had in the past in both of those categories. And then in 2022, where they're applying for the grant, or where they would use the grant, that's the new form of competition that has a theater component as well. But I understand why you were confused, because it took me several times looking at it in order to be able to figure out exactly the same thing.
Oh, I appreciate you pointing that out for me. Thank you.
Stephanie, I think you had your hand up, maybe? No. Anyone else with a comment? If not, please update and let me know when you're ready. And Merlin, I don't know if I saw your thumb or not. Very good. I keep doing this. You guys, I say, do your scores, and then I look for what's up next, and then I realize, oh my gosh, all the thumbs up are happening and I'm missing them. So anyhow, because I have them separate screens, of course. So We're going on to number 12, Johnson County Community Foundation. And Anne, you are the first reader.
All right. Thank you. I felt this proposal is well written, had clear goals and strategies to help ensure continued success and impact on area artists and residents. This will be their 5th year of the program. I felt that the project seeks to fill a need for art in the community, and it appeared to have an immediate impact, particularly in Franklin, the city of Franklin. They offered several examples, concrete examples of how this program has impacted the community. The documentation of the color of the county is excellent. The videos and the documents really let me into the program, and I like that they said on the application, go to this website and look, and there you will see 2 videos, and they told me exactly what to look for. And so I thought the artists that were highlighted, and the artists were certainly benefited from the program. And it helped ensure that the murals were seen. That was important for this particular grant, I thought. I love the logo and the bright t-shirts. I thought they added a real strength to the program's importance and commitment within the county. That whenever they wore those, that helped brand the whole program. I felt the application demonstrated a clear understanding of community needs and those idea strategies. The narrative provides examples of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And then the videos confirm that you've considered that this group has considered these things and are acting upon the themes. I can see the various locations, the wide range of age of participants in those videos, and the accessible setup when the mural is being painted. I felt the proposal detailed a high quality experienced team for the management of the project, and that the likelihood of the long-term impact of the program on the community is evidenced in the inclusive, collaborative attitude of the project manager. The budget seems reasonable. However, the amount requested and the amount listed as cash income didn't match. I'm not sure if they're requesting $4,000 or $3,000. It's a small but a vital error, I felt. That's it.
Haley, you are the second reader.
All right, I think Anne did a great job with the overview. I was impressed with this application as well. Just a couple things I would add would be just, again, going back to the geography, just speaking to like better description of where Johnson County is, like where this is actually going to take for people who don't know or don't live in around that area. I thought they did a great job with the IDEA. This might have been intentional, but I just didn't feel like there was like a massive wide social media presence, or that there was no real marketing materials, but it might just because they were wanting to keep it within the Johnson County community and not really necessarily marketing outside of that area. I thought the timeline was a little vague. I know that they've done this for several years, but it just would have been nice to see a little bit more detail to match the narrative. I just had like an overall suggestion that it would have been great to maybe see in the future some greater diversity in artists that they choose for the murals. But overall, that's all I had.
I will open it up to the rest of the panel.
I will say one thing I did not clarify. I didn't read my notes correctly. They had it was a mural, artist mural. What was it called? The Mural Trail. It was a little brochure that had a map of all the murals in the county. And then on the back of it, it featured each of the artists and gave a little biography of them. I thought that's the part I thought was terrific and would also help make sure the murals get seen throughout the county.
Any other comments? I will ask you to update your your comments and scores and let me know when you're ready. Stephanie, I may have missed yours. Or maybe you're not ready yet. There you go. All right. Well, we are at now number 13, which is the last application of the day to be reviewed. And this is Johnson County Public Library Foundation. Merlin, you are the first reader.
Thank you so much. When reviewing this application, I was kind of highly impressed, especially since it stated that this is the first year that this project will be launching. But I was very impressed at how detailed this proposal was when it comes to talking about their artists, when it comes to talking about the installations for this project. In my opinion, I feel that they gave great detail about the artists when it came to the artistic quality. When it came to community engagement, I was also very pleased about them giving numbers on how many people they serve, which they said 110,000 residents in Johnson County. They also gave, when it came to the idea strategies, they did admit that they do have more than 90% of white residents, but it being more of a rural area, there's a lot of like people with free reduced lunches and all that stuff, which is, you know, that, and also they said racial diversity, which was good. I wish they would have went more in depth with the like the full length of diversity besides the free and reduced lunches and it being rural. But other than that, I thought it was, they went to great lengths to be able to describe their story. When it came to social media, I thought it was great as well, them showing kind of everything that they're doing, have done, and will be doing in the future. So that was, other than that, I don't have any more comments.
And you are the second reader.
I agree with Merlin that it was a very well-written proposal with clear goals and strategies. I too was very, I thought section 2, the idea strategies was very strong. They shared policies as well as examples. I thought that was a very strong section. And I thought overall, I really don't have anything to add. The only thing I thought maybe with their timeline, winter weather and the ground conditions might affect some of those installations. But other than that, that's hit or miss. And that's certainly nothing that you could fix on an application. So I thought it was terrific.
I will open it up to the rest of the panel for comments. Michael.
I thought, considering that there were some limits in terms of diversity in the community, as Merlin said, that it was smart that they spent some time brainstorming how can we at least reach out to whatever diversity we have by coming up with one of the 3 prongs in which art students from the schools in which the diversity level was a little higher would get a sense of empowerment, both over the process and then hopefully over the library itself. And then in addition, then the sculpture project as well, by making sure that it was dealing with gender diversity and that it was a woman and that there was a woman sculptor that they brought in. They just did some really nice things considering the limits that they have in their community, trying to figure out what are we capable of doing with whatever the limits are that we have. And as both Ann and Merlin said, I was impressed with that.
Other comments?
Those are great things to point out, Michael. I would totally agree. I just had a couple comments. I thought that was great. Like, I think that they really went like out of their way to show how they're involving the community too overall. I just love how they wanted to have conversations and input from the community, and that the artist was going to be heavily involved. Just in like echoing what Michael said, just always involving the community and working with those as well. I think it would be just a suggestion, just they talked a lot about the ALC learners. And so just maybe having higher representation in their collection for those learners. They didn't really touch on that, but that might be an interesting idea. And then there's also like a 5-month break in the timeline, it seems, from March to August. So I was just curious what would be occurring in that time. They weren't really clear, but overall great to me.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I will ask you to update your scores and comments and let me know when you're done. This concludes the fiscal year 2022 Region 7 Arts Project panel number 1. Thanks to all who attended today and to our panelists.